You heard it right here, right now from the beach.
The new ivory is mammoth.
What do you guys want to know? I've done way too much research on dinosaurs.
Almost a larger-than-life figure.
No reason at all to think it was made by aliens.
Drop down and go swimming as fast as you can. Out of whale.
All these big giants give me a kiss and tell me they don't.
The crowd, just the pot, the loudness, the excitement, the electricity. I don't know if I can take your little Canadian destroyer.
Future is scary, but it's also wonderful.
Welcome to the Unscriptify, the podcast where genuine meets uncensored as we strip away the fluff and dive headfirst into thought-provoking ideas, once again powered by Jägermeister. Today, we are bringing the heat with a guest who has made a career out of questioning everything, Dr. Michael Shermer, the founder of Skeptic magazine, a professional debunker of nonsense, and the guy who's probably ruined a few magic shows along the way. So we are talking about the power of skepticism, why we believe weird things, and how to navigate a world overflowing with conspiracy theories, misinformation, and good old-fashioned gullibility. And let's be honest, who hasn't fallen for at least one bogus story before? We'll confess ours if our guest, Dr. Shermer, will confess his. So Dr. Shermer, thanks for joining us. How are you? And more importantly, have you debunked anything fun today?
Well, let's see. Not today so much. I've been thinking about,
Still the morning.
this morning I was posting about Trump's Ukraine policy, which I guess is a moving target. I'm not sure if there's something to debunk, or if we need to debunk his policy, or what's been done so far, because nothing seems to be working. So I don't know. I'm not a big Trump fan, but maybe we should try something new. It's just seems hopeless.
But yeah, I saw the news also earlier today before this interview about calling Zelensky the dictator and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How would you rate Trump's term so far and everything that he's saying?
Well, in general, I mean, he's our president for the next 4 years, and so I always root for our president to do well, so the country does well, and so on. So I'm not quite as polarized as a lot of voters are. It's gotten worse over the decades. I like the idea of protecting women's sports and women's spaces, all that stuff. That was sort of a low hanging fruit that really the centrist Democrats should have done years ago, but they didn't, and that probably cost them the election, or at least in part cost them the election. Immigration, I live in Southern California. We have, millions of Mexicans here illegally, and they do a lot of work. I'm, sympathetic. Most of them are good people and so on. So I'm sympathetic, but what's the point of having laws if you don't enforce them? Every country in the world has borders, and they enforce their immigration policies. So, I guess it's never been a problem until maybe the last decade or so. Before that, it was just trickling in dribs and drabs here and there. No one really cared. And, a lot of the immigrants were doing the dirty work that people here didn't want to do, gardening and, all that. So the problem is now it's not thousands here and there. It's, millions, many millions. And so at some point you just have to draw the line, and that's what the voters put Trump in to do. I mean, everybody's had it. It's like, that's enough. And, we've all seen these videos of, immigrants just pouring through the fence at the Mexican border, with the 60 Minutes camera crew, CBS 60 Minutes camera crew sitting there just watching them and asking, why isn't anybody doing anything? And they interview the top people, and they just shrug their shoulders like, oh, no one can do anything. Well, yes, they can, and that's what Trump is doing. So, that's good. And then he'll do the usual Republican stuff, lower taxes, deregulate business. Hopefully that'll result in a boom in the stock market and more economic growth and all of that, because that's what by definition, that's what Republicans are supposed to do. So.
Yeah, until the release of the new version of DeepSeek, yeah.
Yeah. As for Ukraine, like I posted this morning, it's like, the stuff he's saying, Zelensky's a dictator and all that stuff, and Ukraine started the war. None of this is true. Maybe it's stuff he just says because he's working on a deal with Putin. And it's easy to criticize anything you think he might do to end the war. But what's the alternative? I mean, we've had 3 straight years of economic aid packages that we send to Ukraine, along with ammunition and weapons, not boots on the ground. So what's going to make a difference? Well, Putin should just leave Ukraine entirely and give all the land back, including the Crimea. Yeah, I agree, but that's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. Short of, the United States and NATO sending in several 100,000 troops and weapons, and so on, which would risk Putin escalating to tactical nuclear weapons, and that could escalate to, the end of the world. So, we don't want to risk that. And Americans are pretty sick and tired of just endless wars, with Afghanistan and Iraq that just went on for, 20 years. Enough. So, all right, try something different. If Trump can do it, I don't care how he talks. He's embarrassing to listen to, but I don't know. If he gets the job done and people stop dying, okay, it's something.
But also, if you do not include in a proper way the country which is directly involved in the conflict, like this time with Ukraine, I mean, it's the similar pattern that we had here in Yugoslavia during 19th. With the Daytona Agreement and everything, it's just a ticking bomb. So,
Yeah, I mean, these are hard problems to solve.
Yeah, not for us.
Really. Yeah, right.
So, your journey is a vast one. You went from being a Christian to becoming a skeptic, a hybrid, some would say, an internet of agnostic and atheist in religious sense. And is there one single event that defined you to becoming Dr. Michael Shermer you are today, known for debunking nonsense, for debunking conspiracy theories, for criticizing human stupidness, for example?
Yeah, I guess it's probably a accumulation of a lot of things I wanted to be true. Again, I was religious. I was raised religious, but I became born again Christian in college, in high school, and then through college and into graduate school, after which I became an atheist. But in general, that went along with that belief in the supernatural and miracles and all that, where it was the paranormal. And, psychics and ESP and astrology and all that stuff, that new age movement that was, coming online when I was in college. In response to that, there was a robust skeptical movement, led by people like James Randi, the Amazing Randi, and Paul Kurtz and Ray Hyman and Martin Gardner and Carl Sagan, Stephen Jay Gould. And, these were, a lot of my intellectual heroes. And then later they became my friends. And, I thought I want to have a role in that. I'd like to do something like that. And at the time, before that, I thought maybe there's something to all these claims. Maybe the paranormal is real. Maybe there is such a thing as ESP and psychic power and miracles and all that stuff. But when you really look into it and you see what scientists have to say, especially scientists and scholars trained on how to evaluate those kind of claims, then you see that there's nothing to it. And it was always disappointing. Same thing with the whole UFO, UAP phenomena. I've been following that since, college, since the 1970s, when Sagan was, the lone voice talking about the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence. So he naturally got asked about UFOs. Well, you're talking about searching for signals from outer space. Maybe the search is over. Maybe they're here. We found them. Okay, show me. Where are they? Where are the aliens? Oh, well, we can't show you. It's classified or it's top secret or here's a blurry video. Here's a grainy photograph. And if you use your imagination, you can sort of see. It's like, no, you know what? Scientists need better evidence than that before they believe. And that kind of shaped my thinking about it. And so, in the 1992, when we started Skeptic magazine, it was just a hobby in my garage. I was a college professor, full-time college professor. But it just got bigger and bigger. And I realized I could have a much larger classroom than the couple dozen students I was teaching, or a couple hundred students in a large lecture class. I got to have a couple 100,000 students. That is to say, publish a magazine and put on public lectures and do television shows and radio shows and media. And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
Yeah.
Do you, it's interesting. Obviously, UFOs are probably the most popular when it comes to the theories, the media talking about it, people talking about it. You know, uh, it, we had some very much scientists, great scientific minds on this show, and really when you talk to them and when you get more into that, you kind of, even though you're enthusiastic about these ideas of possibility of the extraterrestrial life and this and that, but when you really go into the deep with the science, you realize how just that's hardly possible. These sightseeings of UFOs and things like that, how there's legit explanations for that, and it kind of ruins a bit of your enthusiasm.
Yeah. How hard is to fight back with empirical evidence against, like these claims for witnesses from, I don't know, fighter pilots witnessing on the road and everything? How do you fight people who are claiming something paranormal with empirical evidence? Is
Well,
it
it's
successful as much as
it's very difficult because the beliefs are not grounded in empirical evidence in the first place, such that it just becomes a dispute about who has better data. These are really belief systems that are more like religion, such that, for example, if I confront a Christian who believes that Jesus was crucified, dead for 3 days, and then rose from the dead miraculously, did they really believe that literally happened? I mean, I could see, maybe it's a literary truth or a mythical truth. It's symbolic. It represents starting your life over, whatever. But no, they insisted it's empirically true. Well, that puts it in a different realm. That is okay. Well, let's see what evidence you have, but really they're operating in a faith realm. It's a religious, mythical belief, and I think the UFO people I think UFOs are a kind of religion. I mean, if you really want to know what I think, the aliens are like gods from on high. It's really a religion because the aliens are always depicted as these super advanced, super powerful, almost omniscient, omnipotent beings that are, maybe even omnibenevolent. They're here to save us, or teach us and give us lessons, moral lessons and moral
or
guidance.
conquer us?
Oh, yeah, or kill us. Yeah, they're evil, right? Either way, it's a kind of religion, such that when I ask for evidence, people get irritated. I mean, they're just like angry at me. Even when I say, look, I'd like to believe, really, I would. I support the SETI program. I think searching for extraterrestrial intelligence is a great idea. I love the subject. Can't get enough of it. The whole exoplanets, and let's look for, Dyson spheres around other stars to see if there's some techno signatures of alien. I love all that. So if you think they've come here, I would enthusiastically believe it if you could show me. Oh, well, we can't show you. It's top secret. It's classified. Okay. Yeah. No, it's like, really? It's like you can't prove the resurrection or, this miracle or that miracle. And it's more like that. It's like, well, we can't prove it, but we believe it. Well, okay, but I can't.
Yeah, what would be the strongest evidence that would actually convince you that aliens are visiting Earth?
Well,
Show us the live one.
the example I've used since the Chinese spy balloon incident over the United States, if you recall from a year and a half ago.
Yeah, what weird time.
Yeah, that was real time. There it is, clear and unmistakable photographs, videos, shot by amateurs, professionals, fighter pilots, satellites. We could see it. The United States Air Force sent a jet up, shot it down. The debris fell on the ocean. Then the U.S. Navy collected the debris. There were stories about it in the evening news. The President of the United States commented on it, the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, the Pentagon. Everybody acknowledged that's real. That's what I'm looking for. Just something like that. Like, oh my God, we discovered, maybe Trump is the person to do this. I went into Area 51 myself and I saw it, or I sent Marco Rubio in there and he found the aliens and here they are. We're going to show you tonight live on television. Okay, let's see it. And then
The beautiful aliens and
the beautiful. Yeah. So I would not have to see it myself with my own eyes. I never personally saw the Chinese spy balloon, but I read the papers. I can see the photos online. But not just that, kind of social proof, the confirmation by everybody, the Associated Press and NBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, CNN, Fox News, everybody, acknowledged it, that this is real. The Chinese spy balloons are okay. Something like that. And I would pay. I have a little cash prize offer, $1,000 to anybody that, it's like a betting market thing. The betting markets work. They work really well. When they work really well in elections, for example, who's going to win the presidential election, whatever. When people have to put their own money up and bet, then they're very careful about, how they make their decisions about what to believe.
Yeah, I mean, betting is one of the strongest industries in Montenegro. So,
Yes, I know. Right. That's right. You guys have some familiarity with it. So, something like that. What should we believe about anything? Well, why do I accept the theory of evolution? Well, I've studied it, and, there's just a convergence of evidence from many different lines of inquiry. Same thing with the Big Bang Theory, the germ theory of disease, climate change, anthropogenic global warming is real and human caused, all these things. It doesn't have to be politicized.
yeah.
Let's just show me the evidence.
There's that great quote from Aldous Huxley that says, I'm not a little bit paraphrasing it, but he says that it's a great insult to a human mind to believe in something without the evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you say, well, that's my religion, I'm a Catholic, so I accept Jesus, or I'm a Buddhist, or I'm a Jew, so I don't accept Jesus. Okay, fine. But at the moment somebody says, not only that, you should also believe because it's the right belief. Oh, no, hang on. If you want to believe it, go ahead. As long as you don't hurt anybody, I don't care.
Yeah.
But the moment you insist that other people should believe, okay, that puts it in a different realm. That puts it in the realm of objective truth claim, that it's really true, not just true in my head, or not just true for me and my group, but true really everybody. It'd be like saying that physics is different in India than it is in the United States or Montenegro. No, there's just one physics, right? I mean, you guys have different there's different religions around the world. The fact that there's a geographic map of religions, tells you all you need to know. It's a geographic phenomenon. It's not a reality phenomenon.
Yeah. I mean, but making you a believer in one religion makes you a non-believer in thousands of others. For example, if you are a Christian in one, you have 34,000 denominations of other forms of Christianity, which claims you to be heretic in their sense, right? So what makes your God being more believable than any other God that was invented through the course of history, right?
Yes, exactly. As we like to say, everybody's an atheist about most gods. Just some of us go one God further. That's it.
Yeah.
But even so, here's an argument I've been trying recently on Christians who claim the resurrection really happened. Okay, if the evidence is so good, how come Jews don't believe it? Jews, they believe in the same God, Yahweh. They believe in the same book, at least the Old Testament. They believe in the Messiah as a concept because the Old Testament predicts there will be a Messiah. They just don't think it was the carpenter from Nazareth that was the Messiah.
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and give them all the arguments you want. The empty tomb and the women that saw the empty tomb and the post-death apparitions of Jesus that appeared to the disciples and all that stuff. There's whole books about this. If the arguments are so good, then why don't Jews accept it? And you can't say, oh, they just don't understand the arguments. Yes, they do. The arguments are just not very good. Well, some Christians actually argue that the results of a religion in terms of how well a state government does, or a country, a nation, is an indication of whether it's true or not. I mean, this is an astonishing argument. I wouldn't make if I was a Christian, but that the West has been so much more prosperous than other non-Western countries that are mostly Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist. But that's not a good argument for, is it actually true? All you're arguing for is certain institutions seem to work better to produce more economic growth or whatever.
Yeah, and especially if you historically take into consideration the golden age of Islam, with mathematics prospering and all the
Of
science.
course, right. It's a very narrow, historically narrow focus there. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and last night I watched because you are frequently debating with Jordan Peterson among other teams about the religious mythology and everything, and he kind of accepts religious mythology more literally than you or us. So if religion is byproduct of human psychology, in my opinion, why does it persist so strongly even among educated people? What do you think?
Well, because I think intelligence and education are orthogonal to a lot of these beliefs. That is to say, they're at odds with each other. Or they're independent of one another. Orthogonal, independent. That is to say, that it doesn't really matter what your education is or your intelligence. You're believing for other reasons. Now, once you commit to a belief, educated, intelligent people are even better at rationalizing beliefs that they hold for non-intelligent, non-educated reasons. No. So that explains the phenomenon of smart people believing weird things. As I put it in the last chapter of my book, Why People Believe Weird Things. Why do smart people believe weird things? Because they're really good at rationalizing beliefs they hold for non-smart reasons. Let's say, emotional, personal, mythic, political, whatever the motive is. Then you back into it after the fact. Now that I believe X, I'm going to find reasons for it. Motivated reasoning, confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm. Since you left Christianity, did you reconsider your position even briefly because of some of the arguments that you heard? Because you are constantly on the lectures, you are educating people, you are on those podcasts, talking with great minds. Has any of the arguments that they proposed even briefly made you doubt your non-beliefs?
Doubt, not really, but it makes me understand that if you already believe in God, these are pretty good arguments, the fine-tune argument and the cosmological argument and first cause, prime mover, all those, particularly the fine-tunedness. The laws of nature are tuned in such a way that, we end up with a certain level of gravity and the relationship between nuclear forces and all that allows matter to even exist. Okay. Now we have good counter arguments to that, the multiverse being one. Maybe there's lots of universes and they have different laws of nature. Those that have laws of nature that give rise to creatures like us are surprised to live in such a place. But strictly speaking, we don't know if there are multiple universes yet. And so at some point we hit an epistemological wall. We just don't know why the universe is the way it is. We have some good arguments. I would cover those in my books. And, maybe we'll have a better answer once we've unified, quantum physics and general relativity. It's not my area, but this is what I'm told, that there's huge gaps in knowledge about some of these deep questions because we don't have a unified theory yet. And maybe that'll be forthcoming. Okay, then let's wait and see. Why create a whole new worldview? Why commit to a religion when we just don't know? And, so yeah, they don't give me pause and like, oh, maybe I should think about becoming religious, because you still have the problem of once you've decided that, okay, yeah, maybe there was a creator God. That doesn't give you Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism. It doesn't give you anything. It just says, okay, maybe there's a creator. So what does that prove? Nothing. It doesn't tell us anything about what this creator would be like. I mean, Sagan made this point in his posthumously published book, Varieties of Scientific Experience, a play on William James's book, Varieties of Religious Experience. That is to say, there could be a creator God. There could be multiple gods. There could be a creator God who's eternal. There could be a creator God who's finite and not eternal. There could be a good God or a bad God. Once you allow that, then, why do you have to end up with the one true God, Yahweh, with the son that died for your sins and all that stuff? Because that's always where it ends up for the religious people, mostly in the West, is with Christianity, but I've never seen a good pathway. It's a long, convoluted pathway to get from like Spinoza's God, the laws of nature are God, or there was some creator force that was kind of prepackaged with the laws of nature that gives rise to complex systems like life. Yeah, but how do you get from that to Jesus died for your sins? Right. I mean, it's a long pathway to get there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you, obviously, uh, religion is still a part of the Western world and world as a whole. Do you think in the future its influence will, wane or maybe rise, but in a different format?
Well, the data is pretty clear on this. It's waning now. The rise of the nuns, the percentage of people who tick the box for no religious affiliation at all in the Western world has skyrocketed in the last decade. It used to be maybe 25 years ago in the low single digits, maybe 5%, 6%, 7%. It wasn't very high. Then all of a sudden it was like 10%, and then 12, 15%, 20%. Now in general it's about 25% of everybody in the Western world. It's much higher for it's a generational phenomenon. So Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, it's probably 50% maybe. I mean, it's really high. And I'm just talking about the United States. In Western Europe, countries like France and Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and so on, I mean, their levels of religiosity plummeted
About
decades ago.
50% in Scandinavia, I think.
Yeah, below 50%. Yeah. And their societies are doing just fine. I mean, this idea that you have to have religion to have a viable democracy or whatever is just, it's not true. We have the experiments in Europe, the countries, they have their problems. Everybody does, but they're flourishing fairly well by almost any measure. So whatever religion was doing, apparently you don't need it for a kind of, it's not like society will dissolve into just chaos and anarchy and rape and murder and pillaging and theft, and people will lose their moral compass. That doesn't happen. I'm not saying this could have happened centuries ago. It's a phenomenon of the Enlightenment and in the Western world and its embrace of rights and the rule of law and things like that. Institutions that were implemented and are maintained whether or not you're religious. And so now there's a couple of ideas, I should say, floating around. One's called the replacement hypothesis. That is, with religion in the decline, it's being replaced by something else. What is that something else? Well, some people think it's wokeism or progressivism or critical race theory or anti-racism, any of those kind of popular postmodernism type movements in the last quarter century that seem to have gone up as religiosity went down. Well, other things went up too as religiosity went down, right? The deaths of despair from fentanyl went up. But nobody would blame, well, some people do blame the decline of religion. What am I saying? Yes, of course they do. But no social scientists would say, yes, that's the cause, Anyway.
Yeah. Prices went up as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. Inflation, unemployment, COVID.
Yeah.
IKUZO.
So there's also one controversial theory coming from Rupert Sheldrake about morphic resonance. That's where he proposes that natural systems inherit a collective memory from all previous things of their kind. So what's your take on that theory?
Your community.
Yeah, Rupert and I engaged in a in-print debate, which is an available book. So if you just go to Amazon and type in Rupert Sheldrake, Michael Shermer, you'll find our book in which we hash all this out. I don't think he has the evidence that he thinks he does. He has his various experiments with dogs that apparently know when their masters are coming home, when they randomly assign the person to come home, surprising the dog or whatever. And people who stare at the backs of other people's necks without them knowing. These people apparently can sense that they're being stared at. The theory is that there's almost like a quantum field, but I don't want to use that because that's kind of their hijacking of quantum physics, which most quantum physicists don't accept. But that there's a field out there, and that our senses are interacting with it. That is, you're sending energy out into the world when you look at something, and that can, kind of vibrate the field a little bit, tickle the back of somebody's neck if you're staring at the back of their neck, say, or the dog senses you're thinking about him or coming home, whatever, something like that. Or crossword puzzles purportedly get easier to do later in the day because more people have solved the crossword puzzle, that kind of thing. These studies have failed to replicate. People have tried to replicate them. Richard Wiseman, for example, in England, who studies these kinds of claims and tried to replicate those studies. He also tried to replicate the famous Daryl Bem experiment about backward causality, and it failed. Failed to replicate. And then submitted the failed replication experiment to the same journal, Experimental Social Psychology, that Bem published his apparently proof of ESP and backward causality. And they refused it. They declined it because, that non-findings are not of interest to journals. That's a problem. And that launched the replication crisis in science, because then people started looking at other famous experiments that were not related to ESP and found that they also didn't replicate, like half. Right. So that was launched by this whole, claim and the kind of thing that Rupert Sheldrake believes in. But the whole field of parapsychology is fraught with those kinds of problems. There's almost no experiments find anything. Most experiments find nothing. So occasionally you'll find one that appears to have found a statistically significant difference between the control conditions and the experimental conditions, for which the explanation is ESP. Well, but when you really look into them carefully, they almost always have some kind of methodological flaws, something wrong there was something off about how the experiment was run, or there were multiple experiments. Like in the case of Bem, I think it was 9 different experiments, only one of which was statistically significant finding that was published. It's called the file drawer problem. What happened to the other 8 that were not significant? They weren't published. They just put them in the file drawer. So no one knows about it. This is a problem. Now you have to register your experiments ahead of time so people know what you're doing. And then you have to report all the results, including the non-results. Anyway, so I'm kind of riffing more generally here, but that's the problem that not just Rupert, but all researchers in the realm of paranormal phenomenon, that's what they face. And they don't like it. They say it's unfair. We're being held to a higher standard. Probably because the claims you're making are of a higher standard. That is to say, they're extraordinary claims. I mean, you're saying that all of physics is wrong, and that 400 years of physics from Newton to Einstein all the way up to Feynman and Gell-Mann, so they're all wrong. And this social psychologist proved it in a lab showing pornographic pictures to undergraduates. Come on, really? That's really not going to do it. You're going to have really extraordinary evidence and lots of replications. Quantum physics, again, I don't study it, so I have to kind of take the word of the professionals, but I can see that thousands of physicists accept the results after a century of experiments with quantum physics, such that the chances of it not being true are pretty low. So my credence in it being true is fairly high. Just based on that fact alone. And, other fields, they don't have anything like that convergence of evidence. They don't have a consensus like that at all.
Mm. Let me ask you, to go back a little bit, maybe to conspiracies again. I think I would say the 3 big conspiracies of the United States would be probably JFK murder, moon landing, and 9/11. When I was a kid, I liked the moon landing being fake. I loved the idea, especially one theory where Stanley Kubrick directed it, because I loved 2001. It was one of my favorite movies. That's of these 3, the big ones, so to speak. Which one maybe? Because there are multiple. Like I said, there is we think moon landing is fake, but there are different schools of what What happened?
Yeah.
Fake moon landing.
Yeah, the fake moon landing, the support for that is pretty low compared to 9/11 truth, which itself
Yeah,
was
obviously during time.
yeah. Even that 9/11 truthism has faded quite a bit, as well as the birtherism after Trump's first election. The birtherism and the truthism stuff kind of faded. The JFK stuff has stayed quite active. In fact, Trump was going to release all of the paperwork, government files on that in his first administration, but he didn't. His Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, talked him out of it. Why? Well, I suspect if we're going to find anything, it's going to be something that's embarrassing to the Kennedy family. I mean, maybe there's more autopsy photos or, something that, or more likely it's that the CIA knew a lot more, or maybe the FBI or both. Intelligence agencies knew a lot more about Oswald, and they should have anticipated his actions, and they didn't. In other words, it was a failure of intelligence on the part of the United States government to protect the president. And, or my third option is that the CIA was up to things in terms of foreign policy with other countries, rigging elections, assassinating foreign leaders, things like that they were doing. And maybe the additional files reveal something additionally embarrassing. Like the stuff that came out in the 70s, 1977 with the church committee, church hearings about JFK, about like projects in which the CIA was involved in assassinating foreign leaders in South America and elsewhere, rigging elections in third world countries where there was, say, a fascist dictator and a communist dictator competing for power, or the 1953 coup, in which the democratically elected, I guess, prime minister, president, whatever, was overthrown, and the Shah of Iran was put in his place. Well, how did that happen? Well, the CIA was involved in that, along with MI6, and if there's anything to the JFK files, it's going to be something like that the CIA was doing what? They weren't planning to kill their own president, but they were planning to do these other things that's kind of embarrassing to the U.S. government, something like that.
Yeah, but isn't it already embarrassing enough that whole security agency, the best security agency maybe in the world, couldn't stop just one single guy?
Well, yeah, I think that's what bothers a lot of people. But the fact is, they can't do anything about that. Why can't there be, an early detection alert for school shooters? You can't, because we can't predict. You can't make those kind of predictions. Who's going to be the next serial killer? Who knows? Who's going to shoot up a school? Who knows? Where's the next terrorist attack? There's only so much anybody can do in a free society in which you want to allow people to drive on the roads freely on public roads. And, you want a mail system that protects people's privacy of their mail and their phone calls and so on. And, you could have a program, a government in which you capture every possible terrorist and school shooter and serial killer or whatever. But you'd have to have a Stasi type state, where every single person is surveilled carefully. It'd have to be like China. China with a camera on every street corner, every single house, facial recognition software. They know what every single citizen is doing all of the time.
Camera
okay.
to citizens.
Say that again?
I think the goal is to have a camera per 2 citizens.
Yes, right. Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah. So, what is that? 750 million cameras or. Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to live in a state like that? No, I don't. So, well, you're going to have to put up with the mass shootings and just the crazy shit that happens. It's just the way it is.
And what about arguments concretely about JFK assassination, like famous Zapruder film and the magic bullet theory, that there were more shooters and confessions like that?
Yeah.
How does that influence this whole conspiracy?
I have a whole chapter in my book right there, Conspiracy, on JFK assassination. I go through all those and I just have a single chapter. It's, maybe 10,000 words long. I could write 100,000 words. I could write 1,000,000 words. I mean, there's whole books about this. Gerald Posner's book, Case Closed, really closes the case that it was Oswald. And that was a full book. But Vincent Bugliosi's book, History Restored, I think it was. That's like 1,400 pages long. I mean, it's massive. I got the audio edition. It was abridged. It was only 27 hours long. Oh my God. And that covers all the conspiracy theories. So right off the bat, they can't all be right. If you think the KGB did it, then you can't possibly believe the CIA was also in cahoots with the KGB. What? And so on. So most of them contradict each other. And all of the evidence points to Oswald, 100%. I mean, he, at the very least, he was one of the shooters. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, was there a second shooter? Okay, well, show me where, what's your evidence for that? And the evidence is pretty weak, believe it or not. And it doesn't point to any one person, so people like Oliver Stone will say, or RFKJ, the CIA killed my father and my uncle. Okay, the CIA. Who in the CIA? We know who worked there. They're all government employees. We have their paychecks and their paperwork and so on. And, name names and show us where's the paper trail. If you're going to hire somebody to assassinate a president, well, you got to pay him, or, there must be some memo or some meeting that somebody had that somebody talked about. And nobody is willing to come forward and say, yeah, I was the girlfriend of the guy that was the second shooter at the Grassy Knoll at Dealey Plaza, and here's what he told me happened. There's nothing like that. So okay, and WikiLeaks and all the other mass top secret classified documents that were illegally released, nothing in there about JFK being assassinated by the U.S. government or CIA or Johnson or the mafia or the KGB, any of that. And by the way, nothing also about the fake moon landing. In the WikiLeaks, you have just millions of top secret classified documents dating back decades of all the crazy stuff that our government was doing and intelligence agencies were up to. Nothing about, and by the way, we also faked the moon landing. Oh, what? Yeah. In addition to pulling a coup in Iran, we also faked the moon landing. Now, hang on. What was that last part? Let's look at it. Okay. Coups are one thing, but fake moon landing. Oh, come on.
Well, that's what really, I mean, I liked it. I said I liked it when I was a kid, but really when you grow up and know a little bit about anything, you're like, if somebody could fake that, like, wow. You know what I mean? That's like,
well, and so in a way, they're kind of self-contradictory that that the fakers, the filmmakers, Stanley Kubrick or whoever did it, were so clever. They were able to fake all the zero gravity effects and all the stuff of the film footage from inside the spacecraft on the way to the moon and then bouncing around on the moon. But they're so dumb, they set up two lights, and so there was a weird shadow. Or that they forgot that there's no air on the moon, and so the flag was waving. Oh, I mean, Kubrick was so stupid. He gave away these clues, right? I mean, come on, and by the way, to fake a moon landing, how many people would have to be in on it? They'd all have
that's the best.
thousands of, non-disclosure agreements, NDAs that would have to be signed and enforced, and it just.
And think about the Russians, I mean, or Soviets.
Yes, the Russians would have said, no, we're not buying this. No, the Russians knew we did it. They tracked our own space. They knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
Do you one? I mean, one that I also loved in my childhood, and it has also many iterations. Is the
Pigeons aren't real.
yeah the birds are real, but
Birds aren't real. I love that. That's my favorite one. That's a great one. Yeah.
that's the craziest one. Illuminati has many. I mean, secret society that
Yes.
well.
Well, that's the thing. Secret societies are real, and that's why they're secret. That's why they're secret. What's secret about? I mean, people know about them, It's, what are they doing behind closed doors? Usually nothing. They're just fucking around, just a bunch of guys drinking and whatever. Or they're, insider trading, or they're doing business deals or whatever. They're not plotting to take over the world or run the world's economy. And the reason is because nobody can do that. It's not possible to run a world or run an entire economy.
Yeah. But that's
from an
one of those crazy things. Like, how crazy is the history, and some people genuinely believe, like, Rothschild family. Some people believe Rothschild family organized every war, every conflict, every coup, since the Napoleon. I'm like, that's like impossible beyond imagination.
Impossible. Yeah, nobody can do that.
I mean,
No,
personally,
and see, and I think in a way that's what scares people about conspiracy theories is that, as bad as it is to think that the Rothschilds or the Illuminati are running the world, I think what scares people even more is that no one is running the world. There's nobody in charge, and there can't be anybody in charge. I mean, the most you can see is somebody like a Putin or a Trump or somebody who's got some power, doing something temporarily, kind of feebly, fumbling, not doing it well, whatever. That's how things usually go.
yeah, but that's like, it's it's completely natural to think, yeah, some powerful people, they meet and they hang out and they have certain influence on economy and politics and orgies. Yeah, orgies and things like that. But to think they have this,
Yes.
they have this overreaching, almighty, godly power.
Yes.
It's a little bit ridiculous.
Back to JFK for a second. Had JFK and Governor Connolly switched seats, and it was Governor of Texas who was assassinated, and Kennedy, who was just shot but survived, would we be at all interested in this subject? Would anybody care? Would there be Oliver Stone movies and books and TV shows and documentaries, and just endless for 50, 60, 70 years? Would this go on? No, nobody would care. It's only because it's the leader of the free world. And Oswald was a weird duck. But, most lone assassins and people like that, they're weird. They have delusions of grandeur. They do crazy shit. Oswald tried to kill General Edwin Walker in April of 1963 because he was a right-wing agitator and anti-communist and so on. And Oswald tried to kill him with the same rifle, the mail order Carcano Mannlicher rifle. And we know all of this now. And so anybody would do that just because he's a nut. And
Yeah, I mean, we go on.
yeah, just that's how most of these guys are. They're just weirdos. Tried to defect to the Soviet Union, came back, and then wanted to go back again. And we have the KGB notes about him. They gave him an evaluation. They said basically, this guy's a nut job. We can't get anything from him.
They know everything about nuts.
Yeah.
Dude,
And if you're the mafia or whoever, you're going to hire somebody to kill the leader of the free world. You're going to hire this guy? Really? I mean,
It would probably be Tony.
this isn't. Yeah, isn't a Luca Brasi from The Godfather? Like the ultimate killer.
Yeah, but I mean, we have the most recent example with the attempted assassination of Trump. If it was successful, it would also be a JFK level conspiracy, probably.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
As it is a weird story. That guy, who was he? And turns out he was in a commercial for Black.
and everybody the order went to the BlackRock and
So wait, what? He did what? And then, they like emptied his house and went through all his belongings and then cremated his body and just basically said, story's over. Like, well, wait a minute. Who was he again? What was he doing? Why was he doing that? I mean, that's weird. Same thing with the golf course guy. That guy, he didn't do anything, but they arrested him. Well, who is this guy? What's the story? Come on. What happened to that story? There is weird stuff like that. I have to admit,
yeah, no doubt that there is always something fishy, but these stories get constructed they end up in a weird place, It's just like you go from a little bit of suspicion and truth to, Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing,
yes.
It's a thin line, yeah. Are you maybe familiar with the assassination of Yugoslavian Prime Minister Zoran Đinđić, maybe?
No.
Oh, that's also interesting case, which is also one maybe of the biggest conspiracies here locally in these areas. I'll send you something about it after the episode. But Zoran Đinđić was one of the first. He was first democratically elected president after Milosevic, prime minister.
Yeah.
After Milosevic, and declaring war on criminals, similar like he was Yugoslavian Kennedy in some sense.
Yeah.
So
Very much similar.
with policies and everything. So I'll send you a few links about it.
And what are the conspiracy theories around his?
Well, he was 100% killed by mob, right?
Yeah.
That
Also, one shooter that first did it alone, then they created whole nationwide
manhunt.
manhunt called Operation Saber, where they basically destroyed the criminal organization that was running this area totally, burned it to the ground. And
But now there is a story like with the CIA,
Yeah.
was the Serbian intelligence agency BIA involved in that, and they know it was gonna happen. And he also, did anybody from the West had anything to do with it?
yeah, and in modern times, the most of the blame is put on the Homeland Security being involved and
Yeah.
organizing the murder itself, with the head of the one part of the army being the leader and etc.
Yeah, but he was killed by the members of the mob.
Yeah.
100%. We know that. But like,
The reasons are
The
still,
reasons, and
foggy.
if the CIA of the Serbia or BIA was involved and had place in it, that's basically a Serbian Kennedy, in a way.
Interesting. Maybe it was the CIA actually. Maybe they were involved. Well, I never know. I mean, you mentioned, did somebody know it was going to happen or whatever? There is that in 9/11 truthism. There's the made it happen on purpose, my hop, versus let it happen on purpose, lie hop.
Yeah.
So did George Bush know it was going to happen, and he just let it happen? Yeah. Or was he involved? Did he make it? Now, my explanation is cow hop, capitalized on what happened on purpose. That is, after the fact, you think, oh, well, this bad shit happened, so I'm going to use this as political capital. We're going to go to war. Oh, okay. And anybody that opposes us, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's right. Yeah. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt was accused of knowing about it and letting it happen, so it would galvanize the American public to get involved in the war. No, that's not what happened. But after it happened,
Yeah, same goes
oh,
for
right.
Same goes for Woodrow Wilson. Also, the reasons to join the war in the first time.
I'm throwing these conspiracies at you, but this is perhaps the last one. Still to this day, I still find it, and it's so crazy. Holocaust denial. From the complete nobody died ever, concentration camps don't exist, to casualties were a few thousand people. Why do you think that one, especially because it's history and we learn history, at least at school, why do you think that one persists?
Well, that one generally persists because of anti-Semitism, because it's the Jews who purportedly benefited from this event by using it to create a state of Israel and reparations and all that stuff. And I deal with all that in my book, Denying History. But, I really think that is it. Had there been another genocide, well, there have been other genocides, the Armenian genocide. But that's denied by different people, who's doing the denying of a genocide. That tells us a lot about, the motive behind it. And in this case, it's mostly non-Jewish people that are saying, the Jews have too much power, and influence, and they're using this, non-event okay, what is it exactly they're saying? I mean, what about all these pictures of, thousands of bodies, at the liberation of these camps? Well, yes, of course. War is very bad. There was disease. People died from starvation and overwork, but there was no systematic plan to exterminate European Jewry. And so instead of 6 million, they go, well, okay, maybe it was 1 million, maybe even 2 million. So no matter how many photographs you have or memos and documents of how many Jews were killed in this town or that town, you know, it never seems to add up to 6 million, although actually it does if you do the math. It's, you know, and it's not perfectly 6 million. It's like 5.9 million, 6.1, somewhere in there. There's error bars, depending on how the counting is being done. Before the war, this is how many people lived in this town. After the war, here's how many people were left. Here's how many people died at this camp, that camp. Anyway, that's how that's done. And, you know, and so if you can take away the intention, yeah, bad things happened. Yes, there was anti-Semitism, but, you know, there was anti-Semitism in the West as well. And, you know, look what the Allies did at Hamburg and Dresden. You know, those were war crimes, but they won the war, so they're not prosecuted.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this is an argument that Hermann Goering made at Nuremberg. You know, had we won, we'd have you guys on trial. Anyway, yeah. So, you know, but we do know pretty accurately, you know, how many died, where they died. You know, I mean, the Holocaust by bullets, most people don't know too much about that, but that's that's over 1 million, probably closer to 2 million people who were killed by the Einsatzgruppen. These were the special forces of the SS that followed the German army, the Wehrmacht, into Ukraine as they were sweeping eastward toward Moscow. And the job of the Einsatzgruppen was to go through these towns after the army had defeated the Russian soldiers and then kill every last Jew in the town, just make them Juden-free. And this was a pretty brutal operation, but we have, you know, these Germans, they keep precise records. You know, like today we killed 73 Jews, and here's where we did it, and here's exactly how we did it. And then the day before that, we killed 1,500. And so, and we have the exact numbers, and the numbers, the documents all went back to Eichmann and his office. And so we have all that paperwork, and so we know exactly how many and where.
Yeah. What's a hoax or myth that you think will still be around here in 100 years, no matter how much evidence is presented about it?
Well, I hate to say, but maybe the JFK one will still be alive. You know, it's, who knows. Well, you know, is it a hoax? Whatever. You know, the resurrection of Jesus is such, you know, to me, it's just a mythic story. It never happened. But because it carries so much weight historically, and billions of people, over 2 billion people believe it, I think that one's probably never going away. Despite the rise of the nuns, I don't think it's ever going to be zero, get to zero people that believe it, or some tiny number. You know, probably that'll still be with us.
Yeah, and how would accepting of, because I also believe that Jesus didn't resurrect, how would that reveal by being empirically proven
Well,
affection
you know,
of
if
people?
we
Yeah.
can't exactly prove it didn't happen,
Yeah.
right? How would you prove it didn't happen? So it's really the burden of proof is on the claimant. So
Yeah.
it's called the burden tennis, you know, who's on the side of the net. The burden of proof is on you, whack. No, it's on you, whack. It's on the claimant of the extraordinary claim. I claim somebody who was dead rose from the dead. Oh, okay. Can you prove it didn't? No, I can't prove it didn't, but you prove that it did. You know, I can't prove there's no aliens out there in space. I can't prove there's no Bigfoot in Canada somewhere. You know,
Or Loch Ness Monster.
or the Loch Ness Monster. Although that one, I mean, they've all but drained the lake, the loch. I mean, they have sonar of, you know, the map of every square foot of that thing, and there's no creatures in there. So anyway, that's a different story.
IKUZO.
So what does a win look like for skeptical movement? Is it just proving everything wrong? Is it enhancing critical thinking, or is there genuinely a bigger goal for skeptics?
Well, the big goal is really to promote rationality in the scientific method, scientific reasoning. Just our North Star is the truth. We just want to know the truth about anything. If we can get at it, then let's use those tools, and if not, then acknowledge that again, like the resurrection. If you say, well, I'm not saying it's literally true or empirically true. I'm just saying it's, it's like a myth. Okay.
You never saw another person resurrect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Now, 100 billion people have lived and died before the 8 billion alive today. Not one of them has come back from the dead, except for maybe one, that carpenter from Nazareth. All right, let's see the evidence. So that's it. Really, we try to stay out of politics. To the extent that we can determine things about the world, we'll do our best. But a lot of political issues are not resolvable through just better information. Some are, but a lot of them are not.
Yeah. And you have done numerous interviews, podcasts, conversations. What have been the most surprising lesson that you learned over the years?
Probably, I guess, how persistent beliefs are, even in the teeth of contrary evidence. It's just like the people just rarely change their minds if the belief they hold is really important to their identity. If it's not important, people, if they don't have a dog in the fight, they don't really care. You show them the evidence, they go, oh, okay, then fine, I'll believe that. But if it's something really important to them, their religious beliefs, their political party, something that defines them, and you say, well, but you're wrong, and here's why, it's really hard for them to see that. And that's true for everybody.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Do you just when you say obviously the beliefs persist, I kind of find myself that maybe some people can give us directions, but all the beliefs that you have or do not have or change your mind, it's all about you doing the research, finding the answer on your own almost.
Yeah, well, right. We want to ultimately teach people to do that themselves. So you read a story in the newspaper, or you hear a story online or on TV. How should you think about that? What's the right way to think about that? Don't worry about what I think. What do you think, and why? What are your arguments? How are you reasoning your way to deciding what's true or not true?
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
And I also have one fun question, because you have been on Joe Rogan's Experience podcast, if I counted right, 8 times, and he's a big time.
I think 7 times. Maybe it's 8, 7, 8.
Maybe with the last one, or I miscalculated. so
In any case, yeah.
yeah. So how does it go? Why are you so often there? Because not a lot of guests of Joe Rogan have been there so many times.
I don't know. He seems like me, and we get along fine. I understand what he's doing. He's controversial, but I think people are expecting something different from the show. Joe's just there to talk to people. He's not there to get gotcha questions and push them on this or that. He's a conversationalist, and he's really good at that. I mean, to talk to somebody for 3 straight hours, that's a lot, and to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can't do it. An hour and a half and I'm done. I'm cooked. So, but he's a super nice guy. He's a stand-up guy. He is. He's not, I don't know, because he's controversial with the vaccines and politicians he's had on the show or whatever. But he'll talk to anybody. He would have had Kamala Harris on. She wouldn't go. And okay, well, too bad for her. Because J.D. Vance, I didn't really know much about him. I read his book, Hillbilly Elegy. It was a great book. I very much admired his writing and his story. From the depths of poverty in Appalachia, to Yale University law. Wow, I mean, this is an amazing story. But then he ran for office. He seemed a bit of a right-wing kook to me. So I didn't know what to think. And then, 3 hours on Rogan, it's like, oh, this guy is a total stand-up guy. I really like this guy. And maybe I would have felt the same way about Kamala Harris. He just seemed like an empty suit to me. He just, these idiotic statements, she's just babbling on. saying nothing. It's like, it's just so hard to get behind somebody like that. How about just go and just bullshit with Joe for 3 hours and let people get to know you? And oh no, it's like, well, that was your mistake. That the days of controlling the media are over. You got to go on podcasts. You got to just talk to people. Just be normal.
I don't think she has that skill to be normal.
Maybe. Yeah, it could be.
And it's kind of, I found it kind of ironic because the last two Democrat presidents of the United States were some of the best modern time speakers, Clinton and Obama.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. But that was pre-podcast days.
But I mean, if they had to go to any podcast, I mean, nobody could get them to speak like it. Like Joyce there to get them, but
Yeah. Well, Rogan's got such a big audience, he can get anybody. I mean, that's the largest show in the world. Nobody comes even remotely close. Even like the big television talk shows, they're not even remotely as big as Joe. That's just the way it is. That may not last. I mean, that the whole podcast thing could burn out in 10 years or so, and it'll be something else. If I knew what it was, I'd be doing it, but I don't.
Yeah. But Joe's also one of the originals in the podcast thing. So.
Yes, yeah, exactly. He's the OG, as we say.
Yeah.
So
All right, gentlemen. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Before we wrap up, we have a little tradition because, as you know, we are from Montenegro and we want to bring our country closer to the world. And we have this tradition. Well, by the end of the podcast, we have a quote from one of our renowned either writers, scientists, etc., politicians, which we translate to English. And Luka has prepared a quote for this episode. So,
I prepared a short one from a great writer, Miloš Crnjanski, and on our language he said, nada je najviši stepen mudrosti u ljudskom životu. And on English translated it would say, hope is the highest level of wisdom in human life.
Nice. I like
and empirical evidence.
Yes, hope springs eternal. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to keep you have to have that. There's some arguments for why that's good, but it's just good in general.
Yeah.
Particularly compared to the alternative, as opposed to what? Being, pessimistic and grumpy all the time and angry and frustrated. It's easy to fall into that, but it's not good.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Shermer, I hope you enjoyed this.
Gentlemen, thank you. I did enjoy it very much. If I get to your neck of the woods, you owe me a beer.
We will.
Okay. How are you? Bye.
We stay genuine, uncensored, and unscripted, and we always will, as we have to order our usual. Share us and subscribe us, and stay tuned until the next Wednesday. IKUZO!